I will be a fan of Nicolas Cage. I know I grew up with his movies, and one in particular was my favorite because it has a memory that I share with my dad, and it's Face Off. So that movie, I remember exactly the day that we went to the cinema. I remember exactly the popcorn that I took, how amused I was by the scene where he enters in the church. It's like I had so many little moments of that movie, and I think I've been doing this forever with my boyfriends as well. It was like, it's my thing. It's actually a Nicolas Cage thing in the movie Face Off. But totally, I was so excited and thrilled when I heard that he was doing himself in the movie. It was like, it's that thrill. I thought, I want to be part of this comedy. It's great. The idea is amazing. The fact that is Nicolas Cage, and I didn't know that by then that he would have been himself. I thought that they would have cast somebody to play Nicolas Cage. So for me, it was already a great idea where you were using an actor of his caliber to play a character in a movie that it's a little bit controversial. You know, it's like he's looking for a coming back, and it's a big thing. When I heard by Tom that they proposed the movie to him and he accepted, I was so thrilled because it's such a brave choice that an actor can make, and it makes me see him and in a totally different light, because it's as an actress, it's really hard to face your failure in life, your limits, the dark side of your career, and the moment that you're in. It's really hard, and making it in a movie and making it in a comedy, it's 3 times harder. So I really pray that I could be part of this movie when I've done the audition, and when I talked with Tom. And when they called me and they said, you got it, I was so happy. Well, Tom and Kevin have been really open with us as well. It's been an amazing and interesting work with them. I'm a big fan of the script, so no matter what they were changing, I was like, okay, absolutely. Obviously, it's not a big center of the scene, of the script, of the story. So I had to create it pieces and pieces with them, and it's been an interesting process. It's been really fun, to be honest, because I didn't want her to be just a mirror of Javi and Nick. I wanted her to have her own personality, her own identity, and so I think I tried to create with them an interesting woman, because it is Gabriella. It's not only the person that owns the family business, but it's also like, it's a little bit like a mother, because Javi, the character of Javi, and Nick are kind of like 2 big kids playing around. Well, the relationship between Gabriella and Javi, it's a really interesting relationship, because it's they are in love, obviously, but you don't get it at the very beginning. It's weird. You not really understand what kind of situation is over there. But then we discover that they are in love, but it's kind of like a forbidden love. They can't be together, probably because of Lucas, that the cousin. They don't want anybody to be jeopardized by their relationship, so they try not to show them that they feel something for each other. But she is probably the grown-up over there of everybody. I don't want to say that as a woman, but guys. But she's definitely like the grown-up over there, and she understood how for Javi, Nick and his world is important, and she understands that for Javi it's kind of like a big dream, and as a lover, as a partner, and that's why sometimes as a little bit as a mother, she kind of like hold his hand and walk with him to this crazy idea to invite Nicolas Cage to his birthday party to show his screenplay. I learned a lot from him. It's incredible present of when he acts and when he doesn't. It's there, He notices everything, and you can see that he's feeling everything as well. And again, he's a really generous actor because he's always there for us, even if he's completely covered by 3 cameras. He wants to stay there to give you a sort of an eye line, even if it's impossible that you're gonna see him, and you told him, say, I'm not gonna see you, you can relax. No, I'm staying. I think the movie, it's really appealing for different aspects and also different generations. It could be really interesting for an old generation that loved Nicolas Cage movies to see a new phase of him. Like, first of all, it's pure comedy. So it's really funny to see him acting with a young himself and really interact with his own soul and mind and really take a piece of it. So it's like, it's really interesting for that. And for a young generation to see how like a star that's been in the 80s, in the 90s, and in 2000 now can be struggling and how can get out of a weird circumstance in their life, put it in.
The first Nick Cage movie I ever saw was Peggy Sue Got Married. I remember my parents brought it home and we watched it on VHS. And when he shows up on screen, I was very young, but I remember thinking like, oh, this is an alien. This is not how people talk. And I was so drawn to him because he's, in that movie, he's like, oh, I just wanted to say, like, he's like crazy. But he really burned a little thing in my brain where I was always like, oh yeah, I love that guy. So I was only like 6 or 7, I think, at that point, because I'm very young. But that was, yeah, he left an indelible mark in my head from that performance. I mean, this is a script, Tom Gormican and Kevin Etten have put out this script that is, I'm a writer myself, and you're always looking for that idea where when you hear the idea, you're like, damn it! You have that like huge tinge of jealousy. And to get Nick Cage playing himself, or a version of himself, who is down and out and needs to go spend the weekend with a possible war criminal, that idea is so strong, it's so incredible. In fact, they were able to get Nick to do it. It's just mind-blowing. Like, it's just such it's just one of those movies where so much of the strength comes from just like the first like 6 lines of the description of it. And when I heard the concept of it, I was like, oh man, that sounds like a really, really fun movie. When they reached out for me to be in this, we talked, and he basically just wanted to make sure that like Tiffany Haddish and I are really kind of just driving, that mechanism that kind of is pushing him deeper and deeper, and kind of really trying to drive that action storyline. And the good thing is you have Nick, who's like, he's Nick. You have Tiffany Haddish, who's completely insane, just big Tiffany energy. So I got to really kind of have fun and be that like straight man. I always love movies where there's like guys from the government. Like, I always said I wanted to be in like a Jason Bourne movie, but to be one of the guys that's like, oh my God, that's Jason Bourne right there. Move in, pick him up. He's moving through Alexanderplatz. Yeah, make the move. And that was kind of what this guy is in that. So I got to kind of knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. I got to meet and work with Nick Cage, but also be one of the guys who's trying to kill Jason Bourne. Well, this story, you have at the center of it, you have this version of Nick Cage who's not in a good place, right? He's having some financial problems, he's having some family problems, but he's also mired in this existential crisis. Has he gotten that great part? Has that great part already left him? Where's he headed? And once he kind of does this thing out of financial necessity where he goes down and he meets up with Javi for money, something that he does not want to do. He does not want to have to go and spend time with a guy who could possibly be a gun runner. But he goes down there, and him and Javi just kind of fall in love, right? They have this like bromance where it's just Javi's the biggest Nick Cage fan in the world, and he's able to kind of unlock Nick a little bit and help him kind of navigate his place in the world right now in 2022. But meanwhile, while all that's going on, some folks working for the intelligence community in the U.S. Reach out to Nick and are like, hey, he's a bad guy, and you're going to have to help us take him down. If not, he might get killed. So it's kind of these just two worlds colliding, and it kind of just ends up being this. Throughout the film, Nick keeps kind of talking to his younger self and reflecting on these moments of his younger self, and juxtaposing that with Javi coming out with like, hey, these are the guns from Face Off. If you're like a Nick Cage fan, this is just like a huge buffet. You know what I mean? This is like a Las Vegas buffet of Nick Cage movies. It's like, oh yeah, you know, you got like your Face Off section right here. That's your egg omelet station, and then you got Con Air over here. That's kind of the carving station. So if you like Nick Cage, this will probably be your favorite movie, I'm guessing. When it comes to Martin, who I'm playing, I just look at this guy who's just probably like joined the military after college and has just been like constantly dealing with like doing horrible things in the name of his government and trying to save lives, but also just basically living in his own world that is not adjacent to Hollywood and movies and the kind of world that Nick is in. And so he's been eyeing this guy Javi for a while, believes he's a bad guy, and then all of a sudden the guy from Face Off shows up. And so I think there was something funny that I really liked about Martin not caring about Nick's movies and who he is on the outside. But on the inside, like everyone, he's like, I like Face Off. I really like that movie. Like I never saw The Croods because I was in Bulgaria trying to like take down a terror cell. So why would I know The Croods? But I love Face Off. You know what I mean? Like having that, because at the end of the day, I don't think anyone out there that doesn't like a Nick Cage movie. Me and Tiff are very connected in this film. Tiffany Haddish is one of my favorite people on this planet. This is like the fourth thing I've done with her. You know, I always say she's just incapable of not being real. Like she just can't suffer fools and be bullshitty. And I think she really brought that to the character. You know, that first scene we shot together where we kind of pick him up at the airport, and just the way Tiffany like goes into Nick is just, it's just a very funny dynamic between those two. And to get to kind of be part of that was a lot of fun. The first thing that I noticed was how tall he is. He is just very tall, very handsome, and he looks in those eyes, and you look in those eyes, and every part he's ever done, you kind of see in a minute, and you're like, oh, is this the bad lieutenant? Is he gonna put a gun in my head? But then once you start acting, once you kind of see the way he is on set, it was really inspiring. This guy knows his lines, he knows your lines, he knows where the camera needs to be. Like, he has been doing this for so long and he's fucking Nick Cage. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, is so in control. And really, like, once we got to kind of start improvising a little bit, that was just like one of the kind of the more fun afternoons I've had in this business, just to kind of all of a sudden have Nick Cage kind of throwing stuff at you and being like, oh, we gotta make sure we get this on my side. Like, it just like, it was just like a dream. It was a dream. Yeah, he's awesome. I was not able to work with him because none of our scenes are together. And I hope there's some kind of, you know, party for the movie so I can come up to him and he could be like, get away from me. Because I'm a huge fan of Pedro Pascal. I think he's an incredible actor. When I first heard they cast Pedro, because I'd read the script and I was wondering, who's that going to be? Who's going to be Javi? And then when I heard that they cast Pedro, I was like, oh, that's just like a home run. He's just so cool, so handsome. A lot of people say Pedro Pascal is like a Chilean Ike Barinholtz. I've heard people say that. I said it. I said it when I was driving here. To no one. Tom and Kevin really put out just such a great script. You know, I've known Kevin a while, and I met Tom early in the process. And I think one thing that they were very smart about was to make sure the comedy is balanced with like real emotion. Like they did not want to just be like, this is a balls out comedy where, you know, it's nonstop like zany laughs and wacky escapades. They really, I think it was very important to Tom to make sure you're really grounding it in that emotion. And not just the emotion for Nick, but the emotion for Avi. And you know what I mean? Even the emotion for Tiff. And so I really appreciate the confidence those guys have to not just like go for just like a joke. You know what I mean? To really, Tom, I think, was very, very sure of his vision of the movie, and he did not compromise on that. And I really give him credit. Like, you know, there's a lot of pressure when you're making a movie, especially with a huge star. But I think, you know, he really was able to see his vision all the way through, and so I give those guys a ton of credit for that. The way they executed it, it just works on a level that's like fun, funny, cool, and sweet, and there's just no cringe in this. There's just like just fun shit. I think to get to see Nick Cage be celebrated within a movie, like we all have our favorite Nick Cage performances, and it's amazing watching, you know, I would say the Cage-assance, but that implies that like there was a time when he wasn't around. He's always been just kind of omnipresent, and he's still doing like incredible like Pig. I thought like his performance in Pig was just like, it was so good. But I just think he is someone who's been in the consciousness for so long, and to get to go and watch this like big action, big laughs, a little bit of heart, but just kind of throughout as a celebration of this guy playing himself. He's like really opening himself up. So I think for people who have ever enjoyed him on any level, I mean, this is the movie.
The first one was Moonstruck, and because it was one of my parents' favorite films, so I feel like I was exposed to that very early on, and that's in an incredible cast. Nick keeps his own, and I would say stands out. And that's just a great film. And then the other one, the one that I always come back to, and in the film that I'll always watch if it's on, is The Rock. And it's just one of my favorite, truly one of my favorite movies, and just every scene, every sequence, like those are the two for me where I like burnt into my memories. It was a lot of reading interviews, watching, old interviews, Letterman interviews, kind of all the research you would imagine, watching every film we could. But then at some point it was also kind of putting that to the side and going, okay, we have to tell a story of a man who isn't necessarily Nick, and so the character had to take on a life of its own. And so that's when we kind of came in with this idea of this narcissistic sort of guy, looking for redemption, who's having trouble with his daughter, trying to find the voice of this aging, brilliant, kind of slightly narcissistic actor who goes on this arc of coming back to his family and kind of rediscovering what he really cares about. When we met Nick, it was this bizarre thing where it was like, we had worked on this script for a year and a half, and it was so weird to finally come face to face with this guy who Tom and I hadn't been arguing about, talking about, thinking about what is he really like? What does he sound like? What does he talk like? Who is he in his real life? And then to come face to face with him was like completely surreal. I mean, I think what also interested me when we were talking about this project was to look at the trajectory of his career and him going from him winning an Academy Award and then deciding, and I think being offered all sorts of, kind of prestige drama films after that. And I think consciously making the decision of like, what, I can still do those, but like, I want to go do The Rock. I want to do Con Air. I want to do Face Off. I don't care. Like, that's what I'm feeling right now. And refusing to be put into any kind of box, really. We were so lucky that Pedro, was available and interested, and he just was like the exact perfect fit.
My favorite movie of his definitely is Leaving Las Vegas. I watched that. I felt like that's kind of like a masterclass in acting. Like he just does, he does it better than anyone I've seen. And it's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I was talking a lot about it with the director as well, and he was saying like, Nick is kind of one of the only people who does anything new in acting, where like he's going so expressionistic. It's like a whole different kind of acting. And that's been inspiring to see, like, growing up, just watching him make all these choices and going all the way in on, like, everything he was doing in completely different ways. And also just, there's, like, a video of him online that's Nick Cage screaming in every movie or something. And I used to watch that a lot because it's iconic. Like, it doesn't get better than the screaming. I just love seeing it. Yeah. When I read it the first time, it came off like a real, like, black comedy, like Charlie Kaufman kind of writing, like, very funny, but also with a lot of really serious kind of, like, family interpersonal relationship stuff that they were looking at that I thought, for me personally in my life, was very relatable. But I also think it's really relatable to a lot of people, like having, you know, struggles with, for Nick's character, struggles with, like, you know, how do you put work first and still put yourself first and still put your kids first, and how do you be the best in all those spheres as possible. And then, like, for me, I feel like it's a very weird position to be in, to have your parents be kind of automatically cooler than you. And that's very much the relationship I think that Addie has with her parents, where it's like, you know, how do you can't get cooler than Nick Cage. And then when you're a teenager, you think you're the coolest as well, but you still want to impress your dad, and he wants to impress you, but there's like kind of that butting of heads. And I feel like that's what really was interesting to me about the story, was how real it was. But at the same time, all these really absurdist elements came in that I thought was so interesting, like the kidnapping and all the stuff with Harvey, and then like the classic bromance. I thought that was lovely, and seeing how like male friendships can benefit from being creative together and being like really loving together. I thought that was really cool. So all in all, I just thought it was so funny, but also very touching. And, you know, I don't like anything that's straight down the middle one way, so I thought it was very cool that they could do all the different sides. It's been amazing. They're the coolest. They're very, very nice and very smart and very funny. And Tom, I'd seen his, that awkward moment. I'd seen that already. And I thought he was hilarious. And he, when I first Skyped with him, he was in Croatia shooting, and I was in New York. And he was saying, like, this, it really came off that this was something that he really cared about and wanted to make happen, and that he was doing a lot to make sure that this happened. And that I thought was very cool, that he clearly really cared about the thing that he'd made and cared about all the actors and that they were having a good time. And they've been great. They've been texting me when I'm at the hotel, like making sure I'm okay, and calling me to discuss the character. It's been really cool working with someone who I feel like really cares. And knows so much about the universe that he's made. So any question I have, I can ask them, and they'll know exactly what to say. That's very cool. And it was really touching to see her relationship with her dad kind of go through this arc where it starts out, he's a complete lost cause to her. She has no expectations, only a negative expectation of him. And then he really proves himself. And despite all his shortcomings, it's not that he's a bad person, it's just that he couldn't be for her what she really needed. And he shows up right when he's supposed to and really kind of saves the day, in literally, and then also just in terms of their relationship. And I love the last scene, the moments where it really shows that he's changed, and he wants to see what she loves and what's meaningful to her, and wants to have these intimate moments with her. That aren't self-serving, that will only serve to be good memories for his daughter instead. My favorite scene to do with him, for personal reasons, because it was so nice to just hang out with him, was the final scene where we're watching Paddington 2. Because there were a lot of downtime moments as well where we got to kind of chat and talk about movies, and I could ask him questions about his life, and he was very forthcoming with answers and ready to have a little conversation. We had a lot of laughs. But acting-wise, the best, I think the most rewarding scene for me was the really cathartic dinner table scene. Because I've never worked with another actor who was so present, like in every single take, even if the camera wasn't on him, he was completely present with the emotion, and it was so easy to play off him, and made me feel like we were really having an authentic moment. I mean, it's the ultimate Nick Cage movie, I think. Like, if you're a Nick Cage fan, it has literally everything that you could want. A lot of references, outfits from past movies, and it shows a completely different side of Nick. I think audiences in general will really like that it also shows a less glamorous side of the industry, where it shows how relationships can really be affected by having a career in the industry. But I think also it's an adventure comedy. It's very fun. It's real as well. But at the same time, like, it's so absurd. There's so much going on. There's something, I think, for everyone to get out of it.
Well, what I loved about the script is that ultimately there is a story of friendship and an adventure around, a character that we've all grown to love so much over the years. And I guess, subjectively for me, turns out I became an actor, and I would say seeing a lot of Nicolas Cage's movies had a lot to do with why. I saw all of Nicolas Cage's movies when I was younger, and I think his more than anyone's. And my family was a very movie-going family. I grew up in the 80s, and I'm talking about all of them. Talking about, maybe I didn't realize then that he was, flipping burgers in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I figured it out eventually, but we could start with, Rumblefish, Valley Girl, Racing the Moon with Sean Penn, and Birdie, and then Peggy Sue Got Married, Raising Arizona. Had a tremendous impact on me. The movie, his performance, and Moonstruck, and it just goes on from there, really. And so what I mean to say is that my brain was such a sponge, and was so influenced by what he was doing, that it's very surreal to be, in something with him. I had a meeting with Tom and Kevin in LA, I think early in casting, when I was in the mix, for the part. And we ended up just talking about Nicolas Cage movies more than we did the actual movie that the meeting was about. And I think that if anything, the one thing that I couldn't hide or didn't have to fake was my knowledge and enthusiasm for Nicolas Cage's career. And I thought maybe it would be too on the nose. I'm not part of a, crime syndicate, but I'm definitely a fan. And so that kind of, maybe was part of convincing. I think Javi adores Nick Cage above anyone else because he has taste. And obviously, there's so much about Nick's performances that are wild, and also skillful and, spontaneous and original and, except I mean it. And so I think that that's everything that Javi doesn't dare to be. He's too afraid to, so he lives vicariously through these performances, and I think it just inspires him to, to take risks, ultimately. And because Nicolas Cage takes so many risks in his work. And I hadn't even thought of that, and I'm already basically done shooting the film. Well, Javi's feelings for Gabriel aren't complicated. They're very specific. He's in love with art. love is very complicated. The circumstances are complicated. And I think that, you know, he starts out wanting to meet Nick Cage and celebrating his 40th birthday party with his hero, and ultimately, maybe unconsciously knowing that it's the way to make him change his life and follow his heart. Poor Javi.
So,
What a little coward. I'm not unfamiliar with comedy. I've done a lot of theater and, you know, done comedies within that medium, but I'm not, you know, known as far as film and television for any comedy at all. And so it's been an incredible experience and opportunity to be able to show that part of myself, or allow that part of myself to, in a way, kind of a truer part of myself to be exposed, which will be really sad if I'm not good in this. Me. I think they'll love me, mostly. And then maybe, you know, these shoes.
Well, I was a huge fan of his, like massive fan, and like everyone actually on the film, it was something that was discussed a lot. You know what our favorite Nick Cage performance was, and as soon as I read the script, I loved it. I mean, it's a brilliantly funny, completely original, singular idea. And but I mean, knowing that it was going to be with him, you know, I mean, I've watched his films multiple times over the years, and even during filming, because I felt like, you know, I'm playing his ex-wife, and I wanted to make sure I hadn't, you know, kind of forgotten the impact of them, you know. So even while we were filming, I watched Adaptation again. And then like came in the next day, and I was like saying to Pedro, you know, should I tell him? Is it going to seem weird that I've been watching him in my hotel room? But anyway, I told him, and I think he was happy. Tom, you know, the director, and Kevin, who Tom wrote the script with, wanted to talk to me about this character, and so I was a bit, you know, I was like confused that they just wanted me to do it, and I thought there has to be some kind of catch. But there wasn't. They just, I think they'd seen a show that I'd done, and you know, I suppose they wanted someone who could believably have been married to Nick. And I don't know, I just had this, they called me up and we had this conversation, and while I was having the phone conversation, I thought, you know, I have to make sure I don't lose myself this job over this phone call, because they seem to be offering it to me. Well, Olivia is, I mean, I don't know that she's hugely different from me outside of, you know, the fact that she's been married to Nick Cage. It was kind of like a balance of, you know, she's someone who's had to deal with being married to this version of Nicolas Cage. It's not Nicolas Cage, it's a version of him. And so it was like not wanting her to be... Also, it's different playing an ex-wife to a wife, you know, because she's one step removed. Like, she's able to love him and also, you know, still find him incredibly frustrating, but taking the sort of relationship out of it, and the fact that they're, you know, mum and dad to this girl they both obviously adore, but he still, like, drives her nuts. So it was just like trying to find a balance of not making her too... you know, angry all the time or worn out by him. Our daughter, Addie, is played by Lily Sheen, and she's just an absolute doll. And it's very hard to not feel parental towards her. You know, I'm sure Nick could say the same thing. It was something that sort of brought us together, like our love for this girl, and you know, we both felt protective of Lily as well, because it's her first job. It's her first ever acting job, and yeah, that was a nice kind of thing that kind of brought the fictional family together, I think. It's been wonderful. I mean, watching him work is, it's a ride and a half. He's like, sometimes he's so into the character that you can't sort of get through, and I get it and I understand it and I really respect it. And then sometimes when he'll allow himself to sort of laugh or be a bit silly, it's kind of gorgeous, because you're like, you kind of grab those moments. No, he's exceptionally professional and an incredible, like, he's never less than 100%. Even when the camera's not on him, even more so when the camera's not on him, he just wants to make sure that you're giving the best performance, and he never lets it he'll never sort of drop it a bit because he thinks, oh, it's not on me now. He's really, really generous in that way. I have a scene where he plays the piano and he embodies Elvis. That was the most Nick Cage thing I've seen Nick Cage do. And a really obscure Elvis as well. So I'd be interested to see what people make of that. I mean, it's just complete escapism. And I think that's obviously really needed at the moment. I think if you get the sort of comedy, thriller, caper, adventure thing right, it's the best fun you can have in the cinema. Obviously Nick Cage, obviously Pedro Pascal, who's ridiculously funny in it. I've never seen him do comedy before, and I mean, every day I embarrassingly would collapse laughing and ruin takes, because no joke, every time I filmed with him. So they'll love seeing him, and I don't know. It just seems it's a ridiculous, funny, fantastical, over the top, fun, joyous, ridiculous film.
Nicolas Cage character in this movie is what I think everyone thinks Nicolas Cage might be, but he's not that at all. But it's what I think they think he is. When you put all his work together, watch everything, you would think maybe this is the kind of guy. And I mean, he's had his ups and downs in his life like any human being. My perception of him was that he's like a deep, compassionate, kind. He's really funny. He has a lot of really cool jokes. He tells the best stories. He's a really good storyteller. Also, he's very, very dedicated. When he decides he's going to do something, that's what he's going to do. So I would describe this as a mega superstar who has fallen off, who wants to be back on top and is a little bit self-absorbed, not even a little bit, very self-absorbed, very much all about himself, all about his work, all about movies, all about his art. But he has gotten so into himself or gotten so disconnected from reality that he has lost a grasp on his finances, on his family. He's lost a lot. So in the process of him trying to get all that back, and it's failing very bad, then, so a super fan, which there are lots of them out there, super fan, pays for him to come to a party. They write a script, and he ain't feeling that at first. He ain't feeling that at all, actually. Like, whatever. But because the law gets involved and basically is like, yeah, you gonna help us get this information, then he goes along with it. Vivian is a federal agent who just wants to do her job. She wants to serve and protect her country, and she wants to get rid of the bad guys. She falls upon Nicolas Cage at an airport looking for what she thinks is going to be someone to lead her to these drug lords. And I mean, she's right, but not right. And even though her superior told her to abort the mission, she's like, nah, bruh, I'm going for it, because instinct is everything. And you have to listen to your intuition, your instinct and your intuition. And that's what Vivian does. Working with Ike is amazing. That's my guy. That's like one of my best friends. He's super funny, super fun. We were on a TV show together called After Party. We did another movie together called The Oath, where we played husband and wife. So, Pedro's like one of my good friends. We talk all the time. Like, he and I, we drew close, especially when I found out he was in Wonder Woman. Like, that's because I'm a Wonder Woman fan. This character is so different than the character he plays like in Narcos or any of his roles. But I think he's so right as this because he has this innocence and this sweetness about him. And Pedro's he's just one of my favorite people. To me, this movie is funny and it's fun and it's an adventure. So, and that's how I look at it. I'm excited for audiences to see how funny Nicolas Cage is and Pedro. Like, I think they are the driving forces in this movie, and they are the funniest. I'm pretty chill. I'm not necessarily funny. I'm just, moving the story forward, which, I'm excited for people to see that too.
We just decided that we were going to take a year and write something that we really, really wanted to see. An original idea, and we didn't know Nicolas Cage at the time. We had never met him, so we were just conjuring up this character through interviews of his and quotes and like things that we would see and movies that we grew up with, and created the Nicolas Cage character, and just decided that this was the thing we desperately wanted to see in theaters, and there was no guarantee that it would get made. And frankly, like if Nick said no, it was just like a pile of papers on the desk and a colossal waste of time. I wrote him a long letter. Basically, one of the things we wanted to make clear in this project is that it's not in any way making fun of Nicolas Cage. We wanted to make sure he knew that it was sort of an homage. Nick's like spanning so many different genres, doing every genre. This script changes genres 5 times during the course of filming. And, I said to him, you're the only person that we think could really pull this off in a real way. Then I talked about the creation of like identity. And, we live in a world where especially celebrities, your identity is constantly litigated in the public sphere. And some people try to take the reins of that with social media and present a version of themselves. Nick does not. And so I said this, in a way, like could be sort of a Dadaist, like sort of piece of performance art where we get to weigh in on the narrative. And there's lots of things that are real from Nick's real life. And there are a lot of things in this movie that are just complete fiction. And so part of the interesting thing to me was people going, what is real? What is fake? Who actually is Nick? There's a thread where Central Intelligence is tracking this Javi character and thinks that, is convinced that he's one of the most dangerous people in the world. And they contact Nick, and at a moment of like peak connection and friendship between the two of them, Nick is forced to confront how he really feels about this guy or see him in an entirely new light. And so there's a point in the script where Nick is sort of bifurcated, where on one side he's really enjoying their creative partnership, and on the other side he's thinking, this guy might be one of the worst people in the world. Sharon and Lily are really meant to ground the Nicolas Cage character in the film and understand that there's stakes beyond what is going to happen with my film career, which is a somewhat difficult thing for people to attach to. For me, it was about bringing some heart to this story where, Sharon, whom I love and is just a wonderful actress, makes Nick feel more like a grounded human being. That he would be married to this person who's very smart and thoughtful and a great mother, and then played against Nick's sort of whimsical fantasy career. In his relationship with his daughter is kind of the emotional crux of the story, where he's disconnected from her in a way. Because he's trying to shape her character into someone that he, basically into a little version of himself. Because Nick, for people of a certain age, is an action movie actor. Right after he won an Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, he goes and does Con Air and Face Off. So we were trying to capture some of the spirit of those movies, but trying to keep it fun and trying to, bring a sense of lightness and a sense of joy to this. And part of that was entering through Javi's perspective into those scenes where a guy who's a massive Nicolas Cage fan is starting to see this human being who starts off as depressed and down and out start to become the guy he always imagined him to be. So I tried to film it through the lens of Javi. Nick loved acting with himself, you know. So that was it was difficult, and it was a bit filmatically sort of, for me, it was quite a bit trickier than other things I had done, and understanding how the de-aging would work and understanding like the technical aspects and hoping that the performances cut together was part of the challenge. What about Nicolas Cage resonates with me? Well, I think it's like kind of two things for me. One is that like I'm 41 years old. I grew up with Nicolas Cage's performances, you know, and part of it is that there's this guy who's unbelievably talented, but can do kind of any genre. You know, you've seen him in romantic comedies in Moonstruck. You've seen him in comedies like The Family Man. You've seen him in dramas. You've seen him in like avant-garde weird films like Mandy and Wild at Heart. You've seen him in, you know, big tentpole franchises, action movies like, you know, Con Air and Face Off and the National Treasure, franchise. But you know, that kind of thing, there's very few actors that can do every genre equally well, that can switch from comedy to drama, sometimes within the same project. And like, that was sort of fascinating to me. Nick has become like something that sort of transcends like being an actor. He's become like a cultural figure. He's like someone that, as culture gets stranger and stranger and fashion choices get more outlandish, I think you can trace like a direct line back to like the sort of patron saint of strangeness, you know, Nicolas Cage. I think there's a story that I like to tell about Nick that kind of sums up the film and our approach. Is we were shooting this scene that was meant to reference, Nick in Leaving Las Vegas. At his lowest point in that movie, he's underwater. I don't know if you remember this. He's in a swimming pool and he's drinking a beer. And so I wanted to reference that shot. And, you know, at Nick's highest point as an actor, his Oscar-winning role, have it be the lowest point for Nick in my film. And so we built this swimming pool on a stage and a tank, and Nick is going to have to get in there and drink this beer at the bottom of the thing. And I start to go over to him, and I'm explaining what I need him to do. I'm going, so you get in the tank and you're on the bottom and you're kind of kneeling down and you have the beer. And he goes, Tom, I know, I've already done it. And where reality and Nicolas Cage's career sort of collided, and we both just started laughing. And I was like, of course you have. I've seen that movie.
I was hearing rumblings about it from friends of mine in the most unusual places. I would go to different concerts, and people that were involved with the band would say, oh, there's a script that they're writing, a script about you. And I was like, yeah, that just sounds impossible, and that's just not interesting to me whatsoever. And then I would hear about it more and more. It kept coming, the news of this screenplay about some version of me was in the air, and I kept saying to my agency, I'm just not interested. I have no interest in playing myself in a movie. It's just not something I'd want to do. And then it started to heat up, and I got another call saying, well, there's this script, and my agent, Andrew Finkelstein, said, this is really something you should look at. And then my other agent read 10 pages and said, absolutely not. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Well, then I got a letter from Tom Gormican, the writer-director, and it was a nice letter. And it was the kind of letter that I could tell had genuine enthusiasm in it. I could tell it was intelligent, and it looked like someone that actually had some knowledge about my filmography. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. You know, I started doing this when I was 15 professionally. And to say that after 42 years that this is something new in my life in cinema, and it is kind of extraordinary. I felt like I've done a little bit of everything already, but I've never done anything like this before, which meant that the experience was both exciting and terrifying. This is really trippy. I started getting anxiety that they're actually calling me Nick and they're actually calling me Mr. Cage. And I'm like, wait, I'm not supposed to be, I'm always a character. I'm always playing a part. So it was terrifying and it was exciting, and I will probably never see the movie. It's a little bit like going down memory lane as far as it pertains to Nikki. Like, what was my energy like back then? And I would look at some old interviews. I remember I kept looking at the Wogan interview in England that was kind of, spectacular for both good and bad reasons. And thinking, well, that's a good model in terms of the look. I mean, I remember at first Tom wanted it to be like Con Air. I go, but Con Air is Cameron Poe. That's not Nikki Coppola or Nicky Cage. That's Cameron Poe. This is what I was like. This is the actual personality. He goes, well, that's a little, keyed up. I said, so let's find a way to relax it a little bit, but let's use that for the look and the energy. And I thought that was a good choice. Sharon was great as my ex-wife in the movie. Boy, is she the real deal. And Lily Sheen was, there's a real kind heart there, and it's hard not to feel paternal when you're working in a situation. Plus, I've never had the bliss or the pleasure of being blessed with both sons and a daughter. I have two boys, and that's it. But that's good because in the way they're telling this story, it supports the fictionalized account of Nicolas Cage. I do things like, if I'm making a comedy, there are dramatic moments. If I'm making a drama, I try to make sure there's comedic moments. This is a comedy, but Tom really wanted to play up the drama. He wanted it to be sincere. He didn't want it to be overly broad. He didn't want it to be, overly goofy, that, if there's tears, there's real tears. And I subscribe to that. Whatever the fascination has been on the internet, the memification, whatever it is that I'm, because of a performance style that was intentionally chosen by myself to explore a dynamic in film performance that went into surrealism or the abstract or what have you, people in media have, and you attach that to a couple blips in one's personal life over 42 years, and suddenly that becomes the perception of an individual, when in fact, I find myself really rather boring, and I find myself really rather, to many people's disappointment, normal. So I'm excited for them to laugh and get some humor out of this, which we can all use right about now. And I'm excited for them to go on the ride. The narrative is unique. It goes through all kinds of twists and turns that are unusual for a studio film, a commercial studio film. This movie is taking risks.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.